The crypto world is always buzzing, isn't it? Seems like everyone's trying to spot the next big move, the next fundamental shift.
It never stops.
And right now, one digital asset is really dominating that conversation, XRP.
That's absolutely right. So for this deep dive, our mission really is to unpack the complex world of XRP. That's the native token of the XRP ledger.
Okay.
We're going to get into its recent price moves, the factors, some powerful factors driving its future, and naturally, the ongoing debates surrounding it.
Yeah, there are always debates. Our goal here is to try and give you a clearer roadmap to understanding what's genuinely shaping XRP. We want to cut through the noise, the daily chatter, get you to the insights that actually matter, so you know what's really in play.
Good plan.
Okay, let's unpack this then. XRP. Definitely a hot topic. We saw, late May 2025, trading around $2.43, with a pretty decent jump, like 3.19% in just 24 hours.
Yeah, notable.
But fundamentally, what is XRP? Why is it drawing so much attention?
Right. At its core, XRP is really designed for one primary thing: facilitating super fast and, crucially, cost-effective cross-border transactions.
Okay.
Think of it almost like a bridge currency. It sits within Ripple's payment network. And Ripple Labs, the company, they've been building financial products using blockchain for transaction efficiency.
Like ODL. I've heard that term.
Exactly, on-demand liquidity, or ODL. It basically lets businesses transact internationally without needing to pre-fund accounts everywhere. It frees up capital.
Oh, okay.
And the speed is, it's remarkable. Transactions settle in just 3 to 5 seconds, typically.
3 to 5 seconds. So making global money transfers way smoother, way faster, makes sense in today's world. But here's something interesting. We've seen Bitcoin just going on an absolute tear recently. How does that affect XRP? Does it just, ride Bitcoin's coattails, or is it more complex?
It's definitely more nuanced than just coattails, but yeah, Bitcoin's influence is huge, undeniable. Yeah. When BTC surges like that, it doesn't just make headlines. It pulls serious institutional capital into the whole crypto space.
Okay.
And that lifts the general mood, the sentiment for other big tokens like XRP. History shows this pattern.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We saw XRP surge right after Bitcoin bull runs before. Late 2017, early 2021, logged, multi-100% gains.
Wow.
What often seems to happen is profit taking from Bitcoin. That money looks for a new home, shifts liquidity into other assets, and investors, they often see these lower price tokens like XRP as having, catch-up potential.
The catch-up trade.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Bitcoin sets the stage, maybe raises the tide, and then XRP gets ready for its own act once that liquidity starts moving.
Okay, so Bitcoin provides a sort of market tailwind.
Yeah.
But what about XRP itself? What are the internal engines, the specific things pushing XRP forward right now for 2025?
Yeah, good question. There are 3 main drivers, I'd say. First, and maybe the most critical right now, are the regulatory developments, things happening with the legal side.
The SEC case, you mean?
Exactly. We've seen some, favorable outcomes for Ripple Labs in that long fight with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC.
Right.
But the real game changer isn't just winning a specific motion here or there. It's the clarity, regulatory clarity. That's often the signal institutions need before they jump in properly.
Clarity. That sounds like a really big deal in this space. Can you give us some specifics? What's actually happening on that legal front right now?
Sure. So on June 12th, 2025, Ripple and the SEC, they actually filed a joint motion. They asked Judge Torres to lift the injunction on XRP and, interestingly, cut the proposed fine way down to $50 million.
$50 million. From what?
From a much higher initial figure, yeah. Now, opinions on whether this motion will succeed, they're split.
Naturally.
Some analysts are saying, temper expectations. Judge Torres has her history. Others are expressing more of a gut feeling, a personal intuition that maybe it gets approved. It's really important for you, the listener, to understand this. Some sources might shout, the lawsuit's over, or it's drugged.
Ooh.
That's not quite accurate. Okay, it's more like it's in a very decisive phase. Things are actively developing. There's even talk about June 16th, 2025 being a key date for some kind of decision or outcome.
Watching brief on that one then.
Definitely. And just to cover all angles the sources mention, on the political side, some point to Donald Trump's promise to end what he refers to as the persecution of XRP and crypto.
Right. And we're just reporting what sources say there.
Exactly. No endorsement, just relaying the information that's out there in the discourse.
Got it. So a lot happening on the legal side, and it sounds like that potential clarity is feeding into another huge shift. actual institutional interest growing.
Precisely. The Bitcoin ETFs, their approval really did open the floodgates for crypto investment from traditional finance, made it easier, more accessible. And for XRP specifically, we already have an XRP futures ETF, ticker XRPI, Volatility Shares launched that, gives institutions a way in.
Okay, futures. But what about a spot ETF like Bitcoin has?
That's the big one everyone's watching. A spot XRP ETF proposal is currently with the SEC. Decision expected maybe mid-June 2025.
Mid-June, so potentially very soon. Who's involved?
Big names. Grayscale, 21 Shares, Franklin Templeton. They're all lined up. And get this, some reports put Grayscale's approval odds as high as 85%, with actual inflows expected by Q4 2025.
85%. That seems incredibly high. Is that realistic? What could possibly derail it?
Well, even with high odds like that, nothing's ever certain with regulators, right?
Sure.
An unexpected policy shift from the SEC, maybe a new legal interpretation, even just wider market chaos, any of that could still mean delays or even a rejection. It just shows how volatile the regulatory scene still is, even with all the optimism.
Right. Still some hurdles.
Definitely. But look at the activity. We're seeing reports of massive whale transactions, huge moves. One source mentioned a 640 million XRP transfer. That's strong evidence that big money, institutional, and high net worth individuals, they're getting involved regardless of the immediate ETF decision.
So money is moving behind the scenes too.
Seems so. And it's not just the US. Ripple is expanding globally. They've onboarded firms like Zanbank and Mamo in the UAE. They got regulatory approval there from the DFSA. And Travelex Bank in Brazil is using Ripple's ODL solutions too.
Okay, so regulation may be clearing up. Big institutions are definitely sniffing around, maybe more than sniffing.
Yeah.
But it can't just be about courts and banks, can it? What about the tech? XRP's core purpose, its utility, that must be evolving too.
Oh, absolutely. You can't forget the fundamentals. Ripple is constantly upgrading its network, making it faster, more scalable, more efficient. All that makes XRP itself more attractive for its main job, real-world cross-border payments. And there's a fascinating feature here. Transaction burns.
Burns? What does that mean?
Every single time an XRP transaction happens, a tiny fraction of XRP is destroyed, burned. Gone forever.
Really?
Yep. So it's constantly reducing the total supply. That makes XRP inherently deflationary. Over the long term, that can create upward pressure on the price. It's quite different from many other cryptos that are inflationary.
Interesting. So the supply actually shrinks over time.
Exactly. Plus, there's integration happening. XRP is now integrated into Thorchain. That's a major cross-chain liquidity protocol.
What does that unlock?
It could open up completely new use cases in decentralized finance or DeFi. Think cross-chain swaps, maybe lending, other decentralized services.
Okay.
Using XRP beyond just payments, it broadens its potential role significantly.
Okay, wow. So regulatory shifts, institutional money flowing in, the tech getting better, becoming deflationary, new DeFi possibilities. That's a lot of positive factors lining up.
It is.
So with all that going on, what are the analysts actually predicting for the price? Because like I said, I've seen some pretty wild numbers thrown around online.
Yeah, wild can be the word sometimes. Look, the analyst predictions cover a wide range, but the general feeling is pretty bullish overall,
Okay.
short term for 2025. Conservative guesses put XRP somewhere between, say, $2.10 and $2.59 in Q3. But then you have breakout scenarios. If those ETF approvals happen, if these liquidity events line up, some project figures like $3.84, maybe even $4.
Okay, that's a significant jump from where it was. What about longer term?
Mid to long term. Well, a $10 plus price, that could emerge by 2026 if Ripple keeps expanding its global banking partnerships aggressively.
$10. Okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting, or maybe speculative, depending on your view. You see these ultra bullish models, they're often based on this idea of a future massive crypto market cap, like $40 trillion or something.
Right.
And in those models, they imagine XRP reaching $25 to $50.
$25 to $50.
And yes, you're right. Some sources go even further. They suggest maybe $20 as soon as 2025, or eventually hitting thousands, even $10,000 per XRP.
Okay, wait, hold on. $10,000 for one XRP. That sounds astronomical. I mean, many listeners right now are probably thinking, that's impossible. Look at the market cap. How on earth do people justify figures like that?
Yeah, it's a really common reaction, and it's a super important question. It forces us to challenge how we normally think about crypto valuation. It leads directly to what some analysts call the market cap doesn't matter argument, specifically for XRP.
Market cap doesn't matter. How?
Okay, the explanation hinges on XRP's specific job, its utility as a high-speed transaction asset, because it's built to move value quickly.
Right, the 3-5 second thing.
Exactly. It can be reused potentially up to 50 times a day, according to some models. This means, theoretically, it only needs a fraction of total liquidity to move massive amounts of value across borders. It's about the velocity of money.
Okay. Velocity, not just static value.
Precisely. So if you imagine a future tokenized global economy, and some estimates put that future value at, well, 1 to 2 quadrillion.
Quadrillions?
Yeah, huge numbers.
Yeah.
Now, if XRP were to handle even, let's say, 10% of that massive global value transfer daily, the daily settlements would be in the trillions.
Trillions per day.
Right, and to make that volume move efficiently, smoothly, without friction, you'd arguably need a higher price per token for liquidity efficiency. There just wouldn't be enough low-price tokens to handle the flow.
So the price needs to rise to grease the wheels, essentially.
That's the argument. With only about, 53 billion XRP in use, potentially, for this role, if you get widespread global adoption by banks, institutions, maybe central bank, digital currencies, CBDCs, governments, demand could just go sky high. The price would be forced up, theoretically, to meet those global liquidity needs.
Okay.
It's a very different concept from Bitcoin, which people often see as digital gold, a store of value. XRP is branding itself as pure utility for payments.
Correct.
It's about flow, speed, velocity, not just sitting there like gold bars.
Okay. I think I'm starting to grasp that. It's less about how much it's worth sitting still and more about how much value it can move efficiently. That really does change the perspective on its potential.
It does.
It sounds incredibly promising, almost revolutionary if that vision plays out.
Okay.
But surely there are clouds in this sunny sky. Are there shadows? What should you, our listener, really be aware of before getting too carried away by the hype?
Yes, absolutely. Caution is always wise in crypto. While that potential for a price surge is clear, we have to acknowledge the volatility. It's inherent. A big price jump attracts new people, sure, but it can also lead straight into increased volatility. Profit-taking can trigger sharp corrections, sudden drops. It's crucial for you to remember this is absolutely not a get-rich-quick scheme. There are real risks involved.
Standard crypto warning, but always worth repeating.
Always. Then there's another layer, kind of nuanced. It involves the dynamics between retail investors, like everyday people, and the big institutions. And this idea some talk about called suppression.
Suppression. What's that about?
Well, there's a theory or observation from some sources that a lot of XRP is being bought and sold behind the scenes in private over-the-counter deals, OTC deals.
Off the exchanges.
Exactly. Off the books, no exchange, no chart, as one source put it. The suggestion is that big banks and institutions are scooping up bags quietly, while retail investors are kind of sitting on pause watching the public charts.
And the implication is this keeps the public price lower than it might otherwise be.
That's the implication of the suppression argument, yes. That maybe less than 1% is available for retail investors on the open market because it's being bought up privately. However, there's a counter-argument, or maybe a follow-on theory. Some point out that Ripple's escrow, the mechanism that periodically releases new XRP, is reportedly running dry. Only about 42 billion XRP left in it, they say.
Okay.
If that continues and institutions still need or want large amounts of XRP, they might eventually be forced to buy it on the open market alongside retail investors.
So they have to come out of the shadows.
Potentially. And that could create what some call a supply choke, leading to an explosive reprice upwards if demand suddenly hits limited open market supply. It's a complex dynamic.
That is fascinating. A hidden market potentially influencing the visible one and maybe reaching a tipping point. What other challenges or maybe frustrations are out there for XRP?
Well, we definitely need to acknowledge the holder fatigue. It's real.
Yeah.
Many long-term XRP holders are frankly, mentally done waiting, as some sources phrase it. They've held through exchange delistings, the whole long SEC circus, and they often feel frustrated. Like, there's all this talk about global adoption, but where's the pump? Where's the price action reflecting that? It speaks to the emotional roller coaster of holding assets long-term in such a volatile space.
Understandable frustration.
And adding to that, maybe, some sources point out practical gaps. They note there are currently no XRP acts in legislation, federal, state, or local levels adopting it formally, and apparently no Fortune 500 companies officially hold an XRP reserve on their balance sheets yet.
So the deep systemic integration isn't quite there yet, despite the banking partnerships.
That's what these particular analysts highlight, yeah. They argue that without that kind of broader, formal integration into government or corporate frameworks, XRP's value might stay more tied to speculation and specific utility rather than becoming, systemically embedded like some hope.
Okay, that's a key distinction.
And finally, and this is critical, security concerns.
Right. Always important in crypto.
Absolutely. The sources we looked at repeatedly strongly warn you, the holder, to keep your XRP safe. On a safe, decentralized wallet, preferably a hardware wallet. Some sources even mention something specific called a QFS ledger. The point is, get it off centralized exchanges.
Why the emphasis?
To prevent cyber attacks and protect your assets. Holding coins on exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken, while convenient, exposes you to platform risk. Hacks, freezes. We've seen it happen. This isn't just generic advice. It's a reminder that securing your crypto is your responsibility.
Crucial point. Self-custody is key. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
So pulling it all together, what does this all mean for you, our listener, trying to stay informed about this really dynamic, complex asset?
Yeah, the main takeaway, I think, is that XRP's future seems balanced on this confluence of powerful, sometimes contradictory forces. You've got the bullish, broader crypto market. You have these really pivotal regulatory shifts happening, maybe moving towards clarity. You have clear signs of increasing institutional adoption. And you have its unique core utility in cross-border payments, plus those interesting tech features like the burn mechanism.
Right.
But then you also have the ongoing debates. Is the lawsuit really ending? How do these weird market mechanics like OTC deals and escrow depletion actually play out? And what about those huge, almost unbelievable long-term price predictions versus the current lack of deep systemic integration? It all highlights just how dynamic XRP is. It has the potential, perhaps, to really make us rethink value in this emerging tokenized global economy.
A complex picture indeed. So as we wrap up, here's something maybe to mull over. Considering all these diverse perspectives we've discussed, the fundamentals, the hype, the utility of XRP in global finance, what might be the most overlooked factor? The one thing that could truly determine its ultimate place in the financial system of tomorrow.